The methods of paddling backwards or sideways or turning on the edge of a current, if you combine your force against the current's force to make the canoe slide or move to where you want to go, you can avoid most obstacles. It's like dancing after a while. If you get the right partner and the right skill set, then of course the new canoe designs are amazing. Yeah, it's magic.
That is Wally Schaber, Canadian whitewater and canoeing legend and adventure travel pioneer. He joins us to talk about why the churning waters of Quebec's Dumoine River is his favorite paddling destination on this episode of Explore, a Canadian Geographic podcast. Welcome to all you explorers out there, armchair and in motion. I'm your host, David McGuffin. Now that we're deep into paddling season, we're kicking off what I hope to be a series of interviews on that most Canadian of recreations, canoeing. And there are few people more qualified or more passionate about all things canoe than Wally Schaber. As the founder of Blackfeather Wilderness Adventures and Trailhead Outfitters, for more than 50 years, he's led trips down Canada's most iconic rivers, many in the Arctic, like the Nahanni, the Hood, the Coppermine, the MacKenzie, paddling with everyone from the likes of former Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau to his canoeing mentor, Bill Mason. But when it came time to write a book about his favorite river, it was one much closer to his home in West Quebec's Gatineau Hills, the Dumoine. His book, The Last of the Wild Rivers, explores the Dumoine's deep history and his own experiences on this beautiful, unspoilt stretch of water just a few hours from Ottawa, a place that he's known since childhood. Before we travel with Wally down the Dumoine, here's your regular reminder that Canadian Geographic is Canada's single greatest magazine dedicated to our landscape, wildlife, people, cultures, environment, and more. Every issue is packed with award-winning reporting and photography and maps. A subscription is just $28.50 a year for 6 print issues and full digital access. And you also become a member of the Royal Canadian Geographical Society. To get a subscription for yourself or as a great gift for others, go to canadiangeographic.ca/subscribe. You'll be glad you did. And now, on to Wally Schaber, who I met up with in my kitchen on Meech Lake, where he also lives. Wally Schaber, welcome to the Explore podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, it's great to have you here. And you're a bit of a canoe legend in Canada, and you've paddled the most famous rivers in this country, the wildest, the remotest. And it really struck me, looking at your book, The Last of the Wild Rivers, about the Dumoine River here in the Ottawa Valley, that when you wrote a book, you wrote about this river. And I'm just curious what it is about this river that you feel connected to.
Well, that's a complicated question. Yes, I've been lucky enough to paddle all the great rivers in the Northwest Territories, or most of them. And that's a serious commitment to go up to the Northwest Territories, and it is a lifetime achievement to paddle some of those Nahannis and Coppermines and all those rivers. But really, the nice thing about getting to know a river is that you can access it. And the Dumoine River in the Ottawa River watershed is, to me, the perfect combination of adventure and beauty and wilderness and history. So just that recipe that it has over other rivers really attracted me to it.
Mm-hmm. And what makes it the last of the wild rivers? Why that title?
I picked that title because when you look at all the tributaries that flow into the Ottawa River, there's only one that really doesn't have a village or a dam or an industrial complex on it, and that's the Dumoine River. So we picked the title just to be a little bit of a hook, really, but it is true. It's the last of the undammed wild river tributaries of the Ottawa.
Which is incredible, because the Ottawa is, it's a massive river system, isn't it?
It's a beautiful river with water flowing from both sides, Ontario and Quebec. Of course, the whole territory was not known as Ontario and Quebec in the beginning. It was the home territory of the Algonquin Nation, and still remains so, unceded, actually. So
yeah, no, absolutely. And Canadian Geographic headquarters are on the Ottawa River now, sort of at the meeting point of the Rideau and the Gatineau. And sometimes when I'm introducing this, I'll say, we're based on the Ottawa River, one of the world's great exploration routes, right? And it really, for thousands of years, has been that. And where does the Dumoine fit into that matrix of exploration?
You're absolutely right. The 401 of the 16th and 17th century was
Yeah.
the Ottawa River. I
Yeah.
mean, everybody that wanted to access the West or explore south or west or north started in Montreal or Quebec City and paddled straight north up the Ottawa, up the Mattawa, into the Georgian Bay, and then from there took any one of several directions to discover what they wanted. They used to call it the 3 Gs. People were searching for God, gold, or glory. So the priests, the Jesuit priests, and the people that followed them later were part of that first wave that were trying to take the word of God to the First Nations. Gold in that time was furs, beaver furs. So there were countless free traders and licensed traders that went in all directions to try to trade for the furs. And glory was, there was a whole level of military that started in Quebec to try to maintain the Quebec trading area, open it, keep it open against Hudson Bay in the north and the Iroquois in the south. So yeah, it's a spectacular history that goes right up to Franklin, for example, went up the Ottawa River, laid one of the cornerstones of the Parliament buildings, and that shows you how late the Ottawa River was as a main transportation route.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you look at the Dumoine then, before that sort of whole system network of trading was going on, there was obviously a First Nations network of trading. And so who was living there? And what was, and the river wasn't called Dumoine, I'm guessing at that point either, too. So what was the name of the river and who was living there? And what was the pattern of life there?
Yeah, it was, if you can imagine the nation called the Algonquins and Anishinaabe-speaking people, they had as their territory all of the drainage of the Ottawa River. The structure of the nation at that time was a series of bands or groups of families that would choose to unite together, and each family band was awarded or designated a tributary as their hunting territory. And after they were designated that tributary within themselves, they would designate maybe 1,000 square miles for one family to use as their hunting territory. So there was an actual Des Moines band that consisted of maybe 12 to 15 families that went from the headwaters of the Des Moines to the Ottawa River. That wasn't their only territory, that was their winter territory. The general seasonal transportation habit of the band was to hunt in the winter on the Des Moines, and in the summer they would travel to trade or meet with other band members, socialize, arrange marriages. They would go to where some spectacular migration of eels or whitefish or pick blueberries. They would go to different areas within the whole watershed to survive and enjoy life. That was the history of the Des Moines. The name, the Algonquin name, the translation of it is very interesting because the lake that is pretty well the source, not the actual source, but Lac Des Moines, has a series of 5 arms or 5 bays that extend one in each direction. And from that, a river either flows in or flows out of Lac Des Moines. And the name, the translation of the name that the Algonquins gave to Lac Des Moines was Go Home Lake or Go Anywhere Lake. And of course, they applied that to the main river that flowed out of it as well. And so that was the original name of the River Des Moines. The name that we know, Rivière des Moines, I think was a translation by the French of some sort of conversation they had with the Algonquins. Where does this river go? And at the time, there was some oblate fathers that were setting up a mission way up above Lac Des Moines, and they would travel from the Ottawa River up the Des Moines, up to Grand Lake Victoria to set up this mission. So the common belief is that the Algonquins told the French, this is the river that the monks travel. Therefore, the French gave it the name Rivière des Moines, River of the Monks. Now, there's lots of debate about whether that's true or not, and we shouldn't be using that name. We should be using the original Algonquin name. But either way, it's a fantastic history. There's 500 years of written history there, and oral history goes beyond that.
Yeah. And to what extent is that landscape, say 500 years ago, would it be recognizable now? Like, how much has the landscape changed, would you say?
The big changes to landscape, of course, were the glaciation, and that was 10,000 years ago. So other than fires and forestry, there wouldn't be too many impacts because it is an undammed river.
Yeah.
So forestry began about 1840. The first market for the timber was to take the timber to Quebec City, load them on British ships, and away they would go to be turned into lumber in London or one of the other big ports in the UK. And that process took so long to get the logs to Quebec City that it was about a 2-year cycle to cut the logs, float them, get them there, sell them, and get your money back. And a very difficult process. Then suddenly, a whole bunch of mill sites right here in Ottawa were leased out. Maybe a dozen mills were built within 5 years from 1850 to 1860 right here at Chaudière Falls. Mm-hmm. And that, of course, allowed the logs to have a much shorter trip to market. And that completely changed the logging in the Dumoine, and they could cut right up to Lac Dumoine and get the logs to market quickly. And then finally, the last era was pulp and paper when they cut the short softwood logs and could float them down and pull them in large booms down to E.B. Eddy's plant or J.R. Booth's plant here in Ottawa, turn them into paper and sell them to the Chicago Tribune.
Specifically the Chicago Tribune.
Well, that was one of them, New York Times, any of the old papers,
Amazing. So then the forest you see now paddling down is probably then 150 years old. Would that be right? Or has it been?
There are pockets that we can find that are that big.
Yeah.
You know, if you fly over the area, you'll see that there's still some cutting going on.
Yeah.
And all of the logs stopped being floated down the river in 1960. And they started to truck the logs to the Ottawa River and then float them only on the Ottawa River to Chaudière Falls mills until 1990. Now that whole process is done by trucks. And actually the forest industry is going through quite a transition right now. So recreation is becoming an important element, and conservation, of course, in the history of the Des Moines. And that's where my history in the Des Moines started. I started there in 1969 as a young counselor for a recreation project for a camp called Onondaga. And that camp was originally an Ottawa YMCA camp located at Golden Lake. And in the mid-'60s, it was decided that that camp was getting too soft. We had to find a real wilderness base camp for young men to start over again. So actually it was somebody right here on Meech Lake, Barry Bryant, that led the search for that new campsite or base camp. And he picked 10 Mile Lake, one of the sources right near Lac Des Moines. And logistically, it was a spectacular base to start your canoe trips out. Practically, it was just too thick with black flies to make a pleasant. But for 2 years, we ran trips out of there in big circles up into La Vérendrye and Chippewa Reserve, and we weren't allowed to paddle whitewater in the first years. And then finally, in 1969. Barry said, okay, the last trip of the year, you can lead a trip out to get the canoes down to the Ottawa River. And I started out with 6 canoes and ended up with 4. So obviously I didn't know what I was doing in 1969 and tried to make it a life goal to figure that out.
Yeah, canoes are more fragile back then.
They were cedar canvas, yes. But that's not a good excuse, because the first commercially led boys trip was in 1909 by Camp Keewaydin, and they had Algonquin guides, and a lot of these guides learned all about the river working on the river drives, so they knew the rapids frontwards and backwards. And they used the birch bark canoes and later cedar canvas canoes for years. And they still do. They're amazing. Their camp still goes down the Dumoine with traditional equipment.
Cedar canvas.
Yep.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's great.
Wow, yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd have the guts to do that. So, I mean, just describe that river then, like the experience of going down there. I mean, there's how many sets of rapids and what's that landscape like? And
Well, I'll backtrack on that a bit. Today, the Dumoine is an aquatic reserve, preserved within the Quebec system, has protection against major development. Any logging or mining or hydro project has to go through the aquatic reserve qualifications, and it just wouldn't qualify, I hope. So that aquatic reserve status has been extended to two other rivers in the area, the Coulange and the Noir. Together, they're called the Three Sisters because they tend to attract the same type of person doing those three rivers. And the Dumoine is actually an interesting corridor for wildlife too, because to the south is Algonquin Park and to the north is La Vérendrye Park. So having this wilderness area preserved, not only a recreational corridor, but as a wildlife corridor is pretty exciting for those of us that like to share the landscape with with as many things and people as we can. So the source of the Dumoine is just above Lac Dumoine, a very small lake, Lac Machine, and it comes out as a trickle of a creek that you paddle through a serpentine creek with overhanging alders. And interestingly enough, rivers like the Kipwa and the Dumoine had several names depending on what section you were paddling. And one of the names for the Dumoine was the Alder River. And that would be the section from the source into Lac Dumoine. After Lac Dumoine, or Go Home Bay or Go Anywhere Bay, you can travel to or from Kipwa Reserve, Algonquin Reserve, from the headwaters of the Coulange or the headwaters of the Noir, and go down the Dumoine River. So you can plan a trip that's anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 days on the Dumoine. So after Lac Dumoine, it begins with some nice rapids, and then there's a series of 7 portages on the river. Every other rapid with some whitewater skill is classified as a class 2 or 3 in medium water level, which means that a fully loaded canoe can negotiate down that. So the largest portage is at the major drop on the river. It's called Grand Chute. Beautiful, beautiful physical location. It drops about 50 feet over 3 cascades, and then empties into a canyon that also has a series of 4 rapids that you have to negotiate down. So that is the major physical fault, a fault line on the river. And there's also, at that same parallel, there's one on the Coulange, one on the Noir. So obviously there's something was going on geographically. So you portage Grand Chute, and then below that there's some beautiful rapids, and it takes you another day below Grand Chute to paddle out to the Ottawa. And the Ottawa River, when they built a dam at the village called Rapide de Chouachème, which is the gateway to the Dumoine. When they built a dam there, it also flooded the mouth of the Dumoine River and flooded out about 4 kilometers worth of rapids. So today, yes, that was a good point. You asked me what's the difference between 500 years ago and today. That's the biggest difference, is that in the old days, up to 1950, you would have a hair-raising class 2, 3 whitewater ride right out into the mouth of the Ottawa River. And today, that's all flat water. So
Yeah, it's unfortunate. What's your favorite set of rapids then on that river?
when we first started canoeing there, we had 1 to 50,000 topographic maps, but there were no names. There was a couple of old logging names, Big Steel and Little Steel, and Grand Chute, of course. But the rest of them, in the intense day of rapids, you can't tell one from the other. So we started to name the rapids ourselves. And very early on, one of them we called Canoe Eater Rapids.
Yeah.
because we bent and left so many canoes.
Yeah.
We had to rescue them off the rocks there until we learned how to do whitewater properly, and of course until Royal X was invented, which made all of us good canoeists compared to the days of Grumman and cedar canvas and things like that. So I guess that's my favorite because there's also, aside from the challenge, there's a beautiful campsite at the end of it that you can spend the evening telling lies about your skills.
Yeah, the trip I did in '84 or whenever that was we wrapped a canoe, a Grumman around. Might have been that set of rapids. I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we have some fun names. There's another one called Eye of the Needle, which is a very short rapid, but the challenging route is to go in between two boulders that are about 4 feet above your knuckles on the as you paddle through them. So, Eye of the Needle, you have to go through this little eye of between the two boulders, which makes it a lot of fun. There's a lot of great rapids. Red Pine Rapids is beautiful, with a campsite at each of the 5 rapids in Red Pine. So,
Yeah.
There's so many different ways to paddle a river. You can do it in a week, 2 weeks. Go on a day trip from Grand Chute down. It's a lovely, lovely river.
Yeah, I remember the rapids. I also remember there was a sort of a blissful, it seemed like a fairly long stretch, hundreds of meters long, of just fast water. And we all just sort of lay back and let the water take us down without worrying about any rocks.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful, that's after Little Steel,
Yeah.
the portage called Little Steel. And often if I have a family or something on a canoe trip and it's warm water in August, we'll just let the kids swim and float it with their life jackets while we paddle the canoes down and pick them up at the bottom.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So much fun. I remember there's a beautiful set of cliffs, I think down towards the bottom of the river. Would that be right?
Yeah, we call that Bald Eagle Cliff.
Yeah.
I'm trying to research the Algonquin name if we can find one, because it's a sheer 500-foot cliff that there is a hiking trail we've built that goes around the back, and you can get up on top of it and look down the valley. Just so inspiring to look down, and especially in the fall when all the colors are different.
Yeah.
So that is a real highlight. It's called Bald Eagle Cliff by us again, only because we saw a couple of bald eagles floating around there in the 1970s. And, and there was no other name, but it's beautiful.
Describe the feeling for people who haven't done whitewater in a canoe or whitewater at all. What's that feeling like to be in a set of rapids with your partner and paddling hard through frothy water, rocks looming?
Well, there's 2 forces, the one that's carrying you downstream and the one that you provide with your paddles. So if you teach yourself sort of the methods of using paddling backwards or sideways or turning on the edge of a current, we call that an eddy turn, and paddling backwards or sideways is called a ferry, a front ferry or back ferry. If you combine your force against the current's force to make the canoe slide or move to where you want to go, you can avoid most obstacles. Of course, you have to train your eye to recognize a soft obstacle, which is just a wave of water, versus a hard obstacle, which is a ledge or a rock that the water's flowing over. So there's sort of those 2 skills, developing the ability to read the rapids and then developing your own teamwork to provide forward motion, backward motion, or sideways motion to make the canoe go where you want to go. But it's like dancing after a while. If you get the right partner and the right skill set, and of course the new canoe designs are amazing. So it's magic.
Yeah, it really is. Was it an adrenaline rush for you, or where is it for you now? Because you've been doing it for so long.
Yeah, unless I go in May or something where the water levels are huge and the water's cold.
Yeah.
It's more just the joy, the feeling, the joy, the memories that are going on while we're canoeing. We're not talking about a remote river. You're probably maybe 12 to 24 hours from getting rescued on the Dumoine still. But in the Northwest Territories, if you're on a trip, you're on a trip. You have to figure out how to take care of yourself until search and rescue can get to you, which could be, a long time. So that's, you don't feel all the pressure that you can feel on other remote rivers. The rapids is class 2 or 3, which is very comfortable. A lot of this class 1 floating, which is just, it's just inspirational for your mind to relax. And the water's warm. Fishing's great.
What are you catching?
We're catching mostly pickerel, which are lovely to eat, but there are bass in the river. And if you hike to secret lakes, I'm not going to tell you about. No, there's some nice brook trout fishing in the back country there.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what kind of wildlife do you see?
There's moose, of course. You can see moose. You don't see them as much on the river as you do in the swampy areas. But in the morning, you can catch a sight of a moose once in a while. There's black bear. That's the biggest animal in the woods. But the Dumoine is kept quite clean. There's very good canoe tripping practices by most people. So the campsites aren't dirty and the bears aren't attracted so much to most of the campsites. In the middle section of the river, there is an entire history of hunting and fishing clubs owning cabins in the middle section of the river. So you might be a little more likely to run into a raccoon or a skunk or a bear in that section because they're used to dumps being associated with those sites. Yeah. There's nothing poisonous there. There's bad times for black flies and deer flies and mosquitoes, but you can adapt to that. Other than that, there's beautiful birds, owls, bald eagles, as we mentioned. They're coming back strong after a disastrous 1970s DDT and things. So, the Des Moines today, there's probably about 1,000 people that go down it as canoeists over
per season?
Per season. Wow. The season is May to September. Wow. In my memory, we seem to spread that out a little more than we do today. People seem to concentrate a little more in July and August than we used to have people go spring, summer, fall.
Right.
So other than that, I've written a book and now produced a map and a hiking trail that allows you to really, really get in depth into the history. Yeah. There's probably 20 to 25, we wouldn't call them artifacts because they're not old enough. They're only 200 years old, but there's carvings of loggers' names in the stone, and there's old spikes that they used to build the timber slides and the different deflection elements along the river that kept the logs moving down. And there's old signs from the first surveyors that you can find, and then you can read about the history that is very interesting.
No, but your book goes right deep into the history, right, going back to the First Nations and just how that history extends thousands of years there. So.
Oh, yeah, and I'm not the one that should be telling it. I'm trying to get the descendants of the Des Moines band actually dispersed as the logging moved north. It sort of destroyed their ability to have a hunting and fishing lifestyle. So they had to make a choice, and they dispersed to other families either further north or along the Ottawa River. Today, the Wolf Lake First Nation, located at Hunters Point, has several descendants of the original family, Des Moines family members. So there is still an oral history or a history that I would love to capture to round out the story of the Des Moines and have them tell it as we're doing today. And pass it on.
No, it's so important, really, because there's such an oral tradition in the First Nations, especially.
Yeah, there's not a written history. Like everything I want to look at, the Jesuit journals, the Champlain's journals, everybody's journals, they're all over the world and have been combed over a lot. So, of course, European tradition is to write everything down and to claim everything as personal ownership. Right. As personal property, and that was not a tradition in the Algonquin Nation. So we have a little bit of work to do there.
Yeah. So you live up here on Meech Lake, and one of our famous residents in the past was Bill Mason, who is probably Canada's best known canoeist. But I also think he's, I don't think people know as much about him today as they did, say, 20, 30 years ago. And I think that's a bit of a shame. And I'm just wondering, I know you canoed the Des Moines and many other rivers with him. And do you have a favorite story, Bill Mason story? Or?
Yeah, Bill Mason was a real mentor of mine. He was 20 years older than me and 50 pounds lighter. So we made the perfect canoe team.
Yeah, you were in the stern.
Yeah, I was in the stern. He was an amazing fella. He could tell a story orally or with his paintbrush or with words. He's written several great books on canoeing. So, we really miss him. But he decided after his last major film to try to do a few more northern trips. So I had the pleasure of doing a Nahanni trip with him.
Wow.
A mountain river trip and a Hood River trip with him. So, but still, we loved doing the Petawawa and the Des Moines. So, one of my favorite memories was there used to have the option of taking a bush plane into the Des Moines River. That plane would leave Bradley Air Service Carp Airport the first weekend in May, or as soon as he knew he could land with no ice on the lakes. Right. And he was our friend, Ron Bose, the pilot. And Ronnie would phone us up and he'd say, okay, I'm heading and taking the plane up this weekend. If you want to meet me there, you can pick your river and do the first trip of the year. So Bill and I would try to get on there with a few other guys. But one year, Bill and I decided to explore a little tributary of the Des Moines called the Sucker Creek. Oh, it's only available when the water is really high. Mm-hmm. It flows in just above Grand Chute, and then we were just going to paddle out to the Ottawa River. Well, things went so well doing Sucker Creek, it took less time than we thought. So Bill got out his maps and said, well, if we portage over here and here and here, we can get into the Fil-de-Grande River, which is another tributary of the Des Moines. So you don't say no to Bill Mason's enthusiasm. So, of course, I was as enthusiastic as he was. So we did the detour over to the Fil-de-Grande, and then we ran the Fil-de-Grande for the first time into the Des Moines and paddled out. And that's when you exit the Fil-de-Grande, you're staring right at Bald Eagle Cliff. So it was a very memorable 3 days canoeing with Bill and exploring those three tributaries of the Des Moines. That's a happy memory I have of Bill and the Des Moines.
Yeah, I mean, he's amazing. Obviously, canoeist and author, and filmmaker, and all that. But I remember only as a little kid at regattas here on Beach Lake back in the day. And he's just an infectious personality and a real twinkle in his eye and sort of mischief.
Oh, yeah. But physically, so he was very small.
Yeah.
I think he was like 150 and 5'7", maybe.
Yeah.
And his two passions were hockey and canoeing and art, of course. But he just dragged you along. There was no wasted time with Bill. It was all, golly gee, let's go try this. And, it was a great but too short section of my canoeing career. And
he died too young of cancer, didn't he?
Yes. But he really helped launch our retail business, Trailhead, and our explorer business called Blackfeather. So
amazing. If you were to recommend a movie for people to check out by Bill Mason, which would the one you point them to?
Well, his instructional movies still stand up. You can get them through the film board, or through his daughter Becky Mason. And yes, the technique he taught there. Of course, there are suggested advanced moves now, but if you're going to stick with the classic canoe design, like a prospector canoe, then you want to learn the way Bill Mason taught, because it was the correct way. And so I would recommend that you take his and go look at his instructional videos, Path of the Paddle 1 and 2. If you want a real way to understand Bill's passion from conservation point of view and just some beautiful footage, then his feature film called Water Walker is worth an evening of watching.
Yeah, beautiful score too. By Bruce Coburn.
Exactly,
right?
beautiful.
Yeah. No, lovely. The future of the Dumoine, it sounds good. Right? It's the last of the wild rivers, but it sounds like it might stay that way.
Yeah, the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society has a very strong chapter here in Ottawa Hull, and they have taken on the three rivers, the Dumoine, the Cologne, and the Loire, as a major conservation project. So yes, Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society and the government of Quebec have done a good job at giving the three rivers status, and we'll try to lobby them to increase the size of those conservation areas. We have a small group of our own called Friends of the Dumoine, and our goal is to try to make the recreational self-propelled experience as pleasant as possible. So that's keeping campsites clean, keeping portages open, and instilling an ethic in people that use the river, involving the shuttle drivers in giving out the same message, and trying to expand the type of user that would want to support conservation in Des Moines. And we feel this will be a hiker. So we have created by reopening an old logging road, we've created a hiking trail from Grand Chute all the way to the Ottawa River. And interesting, along this hiking trail, there is three old lumber camps that were called stopping places, where in the 1880s, all of the supplies had to be brought into the shanty camps by horse and sleigh. So there is this magnificent road that we've rediscovered, and along it there were three places where there would be stables and places for the men to sleep at night every about 10 kilometers. So we're really trying to paint this picture up so people can really understand what that era of the history was about. And we're also working with Wolf Lake First Nation to get them to tell their story.
Great.
So that we can really understand that too. So yeah, very exciting times for an old canoeist to turn into a hiker. It had to be a good trail, and it really is. Hope everybody enjoys some sort of combination.
Yeah.
There is a neat trip you can do now where you can hike up from the Ottawa to Grand Chute, have your canoes delivered there, and paddle back down. So
how long's that hike then?
that would be about a 5-day combination, 2 days each way, and a little rest day in between.
Yeah. Nice. That sounds fun, actually.
Yeah, it is. It's great.
Yeah. Last question I ask everyone on this podcast is what your favorite place in Canada might be, and it could be the Des Moines, but it doesn't need to be. But
Yeah, well, there's so many. I just went to Cabot. I'm a bit of a golfer too.
Yeah.
So I just went to Cabot Links, and the whole Cabot Trail, it was just blew me away. The drive around Cape Breton. I've been to the top of Western Brook Pond in Newfoundland in Gros Morne. That's just a spectacular view place. And Wilberforce Falls on the Hood River, and Virginia Falls, and
Nahanni.
Nahanni, and there are so many great highlights. I don't think you'd be disappointed on any trip. We were just talking about the Wind River, how that's amongst all those Peel River tributaries is the easiest from a canoeist point of view, but I'd rank it right up there in terms of beauty and hikeability and paddling, wildlife. Yeah, everything was spectacular on it. So.
Yeah, no, the upper reaches of that coming out of the MacKenzie Mountains, it's just gorgeous. Every bend, it's just a new scene. Yeah. No, absolutely.
So get out there. It doesn't matter where your place is. Get out there and find one and fall in love with it and try to save it. Yeah. Protect it. Yeah.
Paddle there if you can.
Yeah.
Great. Well, Wally Schaber, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Pleasure. Thank you.
That's Wally Schaber. His book is The Last of the Wild Rivers, the past, present, and future of the Rivière du Moine watershed. And I hope all of you take Wally's advice and go out and find that special piece of wilderness out there. Thanks to you all for listening. And please be sure to rate and review where you listen. It helps us to reach a wider audience with these interviews. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Until then, when we'll explore again. I'm David McGuffin.
I think right now we're enjoying very much looking back at the Earth, and it's just a fantastic experience, and I just can't wait to get back and start telling people.
We left Simpson about June the 10th with a fur brigade consisting of a number of yacht boats, each manned by 10 voyageurs.
For us, it means that Inuit oral history is very strong.
And we flew low over every inch of the country that could be. We were hoping that he would fire at us.
Oh, I guess 160 dives or so. There are shrimp, fish swimming around outside. It's just fabulous here.
Well, I'm a first for Canada.